Couple more minutes, write it down. Technically, there's only one answer for the one question. So,
What do you want? Do you want it by the way, Jenna?
sure. Is it off the trailer?
No, not yet.
Okay, I think you're gonna have a hard time getting it off the trailer. That's why I asked if it was. Did you pump tires up yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
There's only one answer for the last question, so if somebody gets it, then nobody else has to answer that question. All right, who wants to go first? Right.
I have sandpaper, a buffer, and a compound.
That's good.
I have to see better, make it look better.
That's very good.
And the last one I have the headlights that can't be restored.
That's kind of a roundabout question that I asked. It's saying the exact same thing. It's specific though, right? Yes and no. All right, who wants to go next? He said mainly everything in the first question. Peter.
So a buffer, a headlight, and compound.
That's good.
Light isn't coming through, and looks bad.
Good.
And it's a glass headlight.
Yes. That is the right and only right answer. A glass headlight cannot be restored. If it's plastic, you can sand it down and buff it back, but if it's glass, you guys ever tried to sand glass? It doesn't really work. Right? I mean, you can sand glass and you can probably get it back, but it's not the same. A plastic headlight actually has a coating on it. That's mainly what erodes and degrades over time is the coating that's on the outside. And unfortunately what you're doing when you're restoring a headlight is you're sanding that coating off and you're buffing the plastic. So if you notice like a headlight, like your truck is how old?
2005, I think.
Okay, so it's what, 16 years old at this point? So a headlight gets to that age and the oxidization that happens and sunlight degrades that like film on the outside. And once you take it off, it's just gonna happen even faster. So like, we're probably gonna clean them up. It's probably only gonna last 6 months to a year and you're gonna have to do this again because that initial coating has come off. I used to use this product that this company called BG made. And their process is very similar to what I'm going to teach you, but the last step, instead of buffing the headlight, they had this clear coat that you brushed on. And it went on really thick, and then it self-leveled itself out. So, I'm going to teach you how to do this way because we don't have those kits, and they're actually really expensive. It's like 60 bucks. But they also guaranteed it for life. So if it ever started to yellow or degrade or do anything like that again, they give you a free kit. It was kind of cool. So the only thing I have to add is, yes, sandpaper, a buffer, a headlight, tape. You have to tape the surround off, right? Just like anything you do, you have to tape it off so you don't scuff any of the body panels around it. And the second one, nobody said this, but for like, let's think if you're trying to sell a car. Is a car worth more to you with headlights that you can see out of, that look nice, right? Value, you may make your car valued a little higher. So, you guys remember at the beginning of the year I had you look at these standard operating procedures. Remember when I said 3M has a standard operating procedure for like everything in the auto body industry? Guess what? They have one for this too. You know how easy it was to find this? Google. You put SOP, 3M, and whatever you're trying to do in this industry, and I almost guarantee that there's a standard operating procedure for it. So this is not exactly how I do this, only because what these grits of sandpapers are here are kind of odd. We don't have 500, okay? What do we have? What's the closest grit, what we have here?
400.
Yes, okay. So let me ask you this. What do you know about different grits of sandpaper? If it's a higher number, does it leave more of a scratch or less of a scratch? Less. Okay, we all know that. That's good. If you're reading through this, your first step is what? Clean and mask, right? Just like anything. You're going to clean it up, you're going to mask it off beforehand. The next step is what?
sander and what you have to use?
With what grit?
500.
Okay. What's the third step? What's the grit you use in the third step?
500. Or 800.
We're going up or down?
Up.
Which means it's doing what to the scratches?
Getting lower.
Fine.
They're making them finer, okay? And also the thing I want you to realize is that in each jump that they're making, it's almost cutting the grit sand scratches in half. So a good rule of thumb, no matter what you're doing in the odd body industry, is that you will never take a sand scratch out that's any more than what you're using. Okay, so if you've got 400, you don't want to jump any more than 800, or else it won't take those 400 grit scratches out. Okay? So what I want you all to write on that paper that I just gave you, our process here is 600, 1200, and 3000. I'm sorry, there's 1500 and then 3000. Okay? So there's 4 steps. They're all going to be hand sanded except for the 3000. You're going to use a DA, and they're all going to be wet. Okay? So this has a couple dry steps. I wet sand everything because I think it's easier. When you wet sand something, it takes the contaminant and washes it away. Or when you're dry sanding, you guys have all had the when you're dry sanding filler or you're dry sanding primer and it plugs the paper up. So here's another question. What have you noticed about heavier grit versus finer grit and how the paper plugs? The heavier grit doesn't plug as much. Why do you think that is? Exactly. So what do you think happens when you get to 1,000 grit paper or a 1,500 grit paper? It plugs instantly. That's why you wet sand basically anything above 800. That's another rule of thumb, kind of wet sand. Now there's a fine line because sometimes you dry sand 1,500, but that's a different process, and there is a specific process for dry sanding 1,500. We're not going to do that until later on. So, all right. So what I want to do is I'm going to demo one of his headlights, and then a couple of you are going to do the other one, and then we're going to start the detail. Okay, sound good? Everybody's filling from the box. Clean. It said clean and mask, right? First step is clean. Would you tape a dirty car?
No.
Okay, so technically in an auto body shop, before a car rolls in a shop, it's supposed to be washed off. But for something like this, you can use the car wash in a can, okay? So I like to just spray this stuff, it'll get all the dirt off. You want to clean the light and the surrounding area so that you're not taping on dirt. Okay? Right where you left it yesterday, Peter. Thank you. Okay, so you're just gonna roughly tape off the outside of this white surround. The only reason you're doing this is just so that you have protection and you don't sand any of the adjacent parts. You're only trying to sand the headlight, right? Just like when you guys are taping off the sand body panels, you don't want to sand anything other than what you're trying to sand on the body. Now that you've taped around, what was the first grit we were going to start with? 600, good. So we don't have sheet paper. You can always take your round paper, I always fold it in half. Okay. This is important. Remember how I talked about a 45? This is a new way of sanding. It's called a crosshatch. Does anybody know what that means? Okay, so when you're sanding stuff like this and you're wet sanding, you never want to make circles. You always want to go one direction and then back the other, okay? See that stuff starting to build up? Come off already? Okay, so you're going to go in one direction. Spray your paper off, spray the headlight down, see all that stuff that's coming right off of it, and then you're going to go in the other direction. Make it a cross. They call that a crosshatch. You can hear that a lot in life, especially in the automotive world. The idea of a crosshatch pattern is that you've got one grit that runs one way, and then you're cutting across it, so it cuts it more effectively when you run over it the second time. You really want to sand this until a lot of that yellow stuff is gone. This is probably one of the most important steps. You see how the like sludge that's coming off of it is white? It's not quite so yellow anymore. Same thing with this. See how it's starting to turn white instead of yellow? That means you're getting that first layer of garbage off. See how it's pretty much white now? Now it looks like garbage still, right? It's like real foggy. Okay, so this is where the stepping the sandpaper comes in. Because now as I step it down, what's it gonna do? It's gonna get clearer, right? Because we're making the sand scratches finer. What's my next step? What's sandpaper? Yeah, 1. Why can't I just go straight to 15? Overcome the scratches. You can only jump twice as much, right? So I like to hand sand this. I know that the 3M guide said to DA, I think you have way more control, just like I make you guys hand sand everything. I just think, especially when you're just getting started, hand sanding things just works better. You got a lot less room for error when you hand sand stuff. You can see it. It will start to drag less. The paper will start to drag as you start to cut through the grooves before it. You see it's virtually like white coming off of there now. There's no more yellowing. It means that you've got all of that toxic stuff off the face of it. Okay, we're going to step it one more time, and then we're going to get the DA out. You want to get an air hose over here, please? What grid am I at now? No. 1500, good. And this is where you're really going to start to see it clean up really, really good. Now there's something going on inside the headlight there. It's like a fog spot or something, where a little bit of water might be built up, some moisture. That's never going to come out. because it's on the inside of the headlight. See a lot less of the sludge coming off too. It's not cutting as deep. You can use the DA. We have this Trizac paper. You guys all remember this from when we talked about sandpaper. It has a little foam backer on it. Okay. So I cut these down to fit our 3-inch DA. This stuff you cannot use this on your hand. It's just not aggressive enough to do like a hand polish with it. So it's made to be on a DA. You can't really use it on your hand. Get it wet, especially that one with used, so you want to make sure that all of the old contaminants are out of it. Just wet the headlight. So the thing is with this sandpaper, it's so fine that if you have too much water, it'll actually float on the surface. Same thing applies when we start buffing cars. When you use this, it's like a happy medium of too much water and not enough. And you'll see. Almost too much water right there. Same rules apply when you're like sanding the DA, when you're getting into these processes of polishing. When you actually start moving a buffer, you want to use the crosshatch pattern. You go up, down, and then side to side, cut over it. Okay? Starting to dry out a little bit more water on it. See what's starting to happen now, right? You can really start to see how it's clearing up. 3000 is such a fine grit of sandpaper, it's almost like polishing. It's essentially the first step in polishing. It's like, you can ask Mitchell, me and Mitchell have had a conversation about where he works, where his co-op is, and they don't use 3000, they use a wool pad, and he tells me it takes like 10 times longer to buff their cars than they do there. So, once you're done that, clean everything up, wipe this thing off, get the majority of the water off of it. Now you want to use compound. I know we haven't talked a lot about buffing compound. The 3M procedure had compound and polish. We'll see how it looks with just compound. So when we start buffing, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but there's two foam pads that we use primarily, a yellow one, which is a coarser pad, and then you have rubbing compound, okay? It's white in color, it actually has some grit inside of it. And then you finish with a polish. A polishing pad is gray, and it's a little fluffier foam. It's not quite as dense, of course, as this. And then there's a gray polish that goes with it. put just a few dabs of this on here. You don't need water on this pad. I know when you were buffing. These pads are small. If you put too much water on them, they'll fling everything everywhere. So I like to spread this out first so that it doesn't make a humongous mess. The same rules apply with this. You're going to go back and forth and up and down. Basically it. I mean, we can put some polish on it, but I don't think it's super necessary. These headlights are kind of, there's some moisture inside of them, so time for some new headlights, Caleb.
Yeah.
Oh, this will get you through. Wipe it down with a microfiber and peel the tape off. So what we'll do is, you gotta get the detail started. You and I will do this afternoon. Okay? We'll pull it back in this afternoon, do the other one. Think you can do that, Peter? Alright. Yep. Your car's next. Is that what you said? You guys can clearly see how much clearer and cleaner that is.